الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
بسم الله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بك من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله قال عز وجل في الكتاب المجيد يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. We praise Allah Azza wa Jalla. We recognize all the blessings, all the things that He has given us in this life, and we recognize that our place is to perform shukr and also to perform sabr in calamities and shukr in obviously the plentiful things that we have been given. We recognize that there is no one worthy of worship except Allah, meaning He is our highest priority, He is our goal. To please Him is the blueprint to success. The thing that we take to our grave is that did we please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not? And the way to that pleasure of God has been shown by the second shahada that we mentioned, and that is that we testify that Muhammad is the prophet and messenger and a slave or servant of God. Because the Prophet Muhammad, just in the line of all the messengers and prophets, is pertinent, important to show us, to give us the guidance of Allah Azza wa Jalla. And the book of Allah, Quran, is the guidance as we have received it. I remind you and myself as we stand or sit here today about this day of Jumu'ah. And the Prophet ﷺ would remind his community by mentioning it to them, be God conscious. O you who profess faith or iman or claim to have iman, faith, be people of taqwa. Be God conscious. As you are well aware that how you should be God conscious. In your matters, in your thoughts, in your speech, in your dealings, in your work, in your studies, in your interactions, be God conscious. And you know it better than anybody else how to be God conscious. اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. And let not death approach you except that you find yourself in that way of life. Like Muslim, not just by name, but Muslim with the submission to God. That you lived your entire life being a person of Islam. Somebody who has given up, right? Their desires, their rights, their things, but you have given that up to obey God. Right? So God comes first and everything else follows, inshallah. Today, inshallah, as I said before you, we're all struggling, we're all trying to do our best, inshallah, this place called dunya. And the thing about it is that the time is so short, you think it's so long when you're here. Right? So some of you are thinking this khutbah is really long, but when you're here, it may seem long, but when you're done with it, it's very short. And so that's the case with your life, the previous years and days. Right? It seemed like a long time, but first grade was, you can't even remember a couple of things about it. If you had to write an essay about it, it would be like, what did I do in the first grade? You spent the whole year there. So that's the nature of this dunya, that it's fleeting, it's going fast. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us is this, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullah. O you who believe, be God conscious, as you are in this place. وَلْتَنْظُرْ نَفْسٌ مَا قَدَّمَتْ لِغَدٍ. And let each one of you look, nazar, right? You have to look. مَا قَدَّمَتْ لِغَدٍ. What you have prepared for tomorrow, غَدٍ, right? What is it that you have for tomorrow? And what is that tomorrow? It's not the graduation ceremony, right? It's not the job interview tomorrow. It's not the pay scale that you're going to achieve, hopefully, or a certificate of some kind, but rather tomorrow is what all of the humanity is going to go for, or have to stand and answer. And that tomorrow is Yawm al-Qiyamah. So first, Allah starts this particular ayah in Surah Al-Hashr. He starts with ittaqullah, and let yourself be on guard as to what you're doing and what you have prepared for yourself and what's coming for tomorrow. And then He reminds us again, wattaqullah, second time. Be God conscious. Inna Allah khabirun bima ta'malun. Why? Because Allah is well aware of all that you are doing. Well aware. All of us. He knows. Right? All the things that come to, all the thoughts, all the interactions, all the planning, right? He's all aware about that. And so our duty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, now He reminds us, after being in that submissive state, where you have God consciousness first, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ. So don't be like those who forgot Allah. Nasiya is to forget. Right? وَلَا تَكُونُوا, do not be like those. كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ. And when you do that, when you forget Allah, you know what happens? فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. They actually forgot themselves. Meaning who they were as servants. They thought they were here forever. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them, when you forget Allah, Allah does not forget things. But when people forget Allah, they forget who they are and what they're all about and why they're here. And that's when people run into trouble. Because they think they're all kings and queens. They think they got all this time and place and they could do whatever they want to, right? And that's when they run into trouble. So أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. And these are the people who are really bad, wretched people. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He goes on to say, لَا يَسْتَوِي أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ وَأَصْحَابُ الْجَنَّةِ. The people of Jannah and people of fire are not the same, right? They're not the same. Ashabul Jannati humul faizun. The people of Jannah will have great success. So after mentioning all these ayat, inshallah, this is just an introduction to the verses of the Quran that I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to talk about, inshallah, things that we struggle with, right, as believers. And, you know, when we look at the grand scheme of things, there's so much that you struggle against, right? As you are trying to be a good person, as you are trying to be a person of faith, as you are trying to be a person of taqwa. Right? As a believer, all of us have that goal, inshallah. All of us have Allah as our priority. So when we struggle with that, I wanted to mention something that before we become, and as we get closer and closer to Allah, inshallah, with our time specifically, but also with our deeds, there's something called clutter removal, right? Focus on something is actually about removing all the distractions that are there, right? What could be some of the distractions? They used to have a term in computer science and engineering, software development. It was called WYSIWYG, right? And WYSIWYG was a concept. It was an abbreviation for what you see is what you get. WYSIWYG, right? And that term was because you plug it in and it just does what it's supposed to. What you see is what you get. And that if you look at it, a lot of times when we're looking at our lifestyle, what you see is what you get. Where we spend our time, where we spend our eyes, sight, what we're doing with our time, is that what you get. So people, when they look at it, they say, you know, how come we hear about these great people, right? There was a lecture, khutbah about Mus'ab ibn Umair, right? How about, he was a great person. What you see is what you get, because where he spent his time with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions, right, it had an effect on him. The company that he kept, the places that he went to, the actions that he performed had an effect on his heart. Right? Similarly, the company that we keep, the actions that we perform, the time where we spend, where our sight goes, that has, right? You know, that's what it gives us. What you see is what you get. So recognizing where we're spending our time. Number two, a lot of times we get, when we're talking about clutter removal, right? We get caught up with the big problem, right? There's always a big problem. And it will be there until we hit the grave, and then there will be a bigger problem for some people. But the big problem is, a lot of times, the parent issues, right? The big problem is the financial issues for some of us. The big problem is the grades, right, that we're supposed to focus on and being here. And that seems to be the big problem. But I want you to recognize that that is actually a small problem. And all the problems that are there, whatever, you know, and the gender issue too. I mean, you know, is she gonna say yes? Or is she, you know, is he gonna be there after graduation? Should I talk to her parents? Should I talk to her, you know, all these things are gonna be there. It depends on where you are in your life, right? So all these issues are going to be there. And for, you know, obviously these are big issues for all of us. But what you have to recognize is there's a reason why we perform prayers 5 times a day. You ask Allah for whatever you're struggling with. Right? I remember one time I was, and you know, all these problems seem big when we're going through it. I was at work, and I do a lot of environmental work, so I parked my car. And there was like this forested area. So I went in, and it was at it was a dealership, so auto dealer, I think it was Toyota or something like that. And so I went in there, I was there for like maybe 4 or 5 miles walking, looking at the streams and plants and vegetations. And I come out, and usually when you come out, you got like all these bugs and like mosquitoes that you have swallowed and like nests and all these, right, webs. But when I come out, I'm like, all right, I'm feeling good, nothing on me, alhamdulillah. And I sit, and I'm like, got the keys, great. Where's my phone? And it's like, for the next 20 minutes, or half an hour, something like that. I'm going crazy. I went back into the wooded area, and I'm chasing my, you know, I'm like feeling like, oh my God, that's deer track. that can't be mine. You know, like you're doing this, and then I come back, and I'm exhausted, and then I couldn't think of anything, but then lastly, where you don't have anything, other way to go, you've done everything, you searched the car, you searched, you know, you went back into the forest, you looked at it, and then I'm like, oh Allah, please help me, you know, like the final thing. And then all of a sudden, right, I kid you not, like maybe a minute or like as I'm thinking about it, I go back into like dealership and I'm telling them like, hey, if you see a phone here, just like, this person walks right out and he's like, you know, does this belong to you? Because somebody gave it to us that we found it in the parking area. And I'm like, that's what I was looking for. But, you know, had I started with the dua first, perhaps I would not have to go through the whole, you know, in circles. And a lot of times what happens, the idea behind the story is this. Don't go to the jungle and lose your wallet or phone. No. The idea is this. When calamity strikes us, we should be making dua first. Right? When something goes wrong, don't wait till the end where you have tried everything and then you go, oh man, the only thing left to do, right? It's like the patient who's going to leave the world and he's done and basically says, go pray, right? That shouldn't be the case. The first thing we should do is make dua, right? About the state that we're in, what we're struggling with. And so again, focusing on what we need to do, it all starts with prayer and making dua. The third thing I wanted to mention, inshallah, as we're talking about the assessment, making du'as, it is very important that we must recognize what time period we're in today. Okay? Many times when we're reading the books, and I know a lot of religious people, when they read books of the previous predecessors, there is a world that they lived in. And there's a world that we live in today. And their world, pre-industrial Muslim world, was very different than postmodern world that we're a part of. Right? The concepts, and we'll find it, you know, I see it with the Muslims too, mashallah, and non-Muslims to a certain degree. But the concepts such as haya, modesty, concepts such as honoring people and giving them your seat, right? Really looking after them and approaching them with humility. These are not the concept you will find on TV programs. These are not the concept that you will find on Facebook or Twitter or all these other places, right? What you will find, modern day phenomena and heart diseases of the heart, is that you will find ujub, right? Ujub was something that they talked about, as that self-indulgence. Right? Everybody wants to look pretty, right? Everybody wants to use those hide your face, whatever, makeup, like makeover, and that's what happens to people when they start looking into it. And there's no end to it. There's no end to it. And so our job is to focus on what we need to do in order to make it out of here. Right? When we do, like when we receive the report card on our, hopefully inshallah, in our right hands on the Day of Judgment, we have done really well. And we are not people who are competing with those other people who have a different religion and a different understanding of this world called dunya, right? This place. Right? And so I remind you and myself that all of the goals, take a look at those goals that you have, right? And obviously, I mentioned general goals that people would have: graduation, finding a great job, having a family, you know, having that partner in your life partner with you, getting a place, nice place to live in, you know, being a professional and really getting a jump start in your career, right? Staying where you want to stay, all these other things, right, that you want to have. Those are great goals. But as a Muslim, right, because the university is not going to teach you this, because it's religion, right? As a Muslim, you have certain goals that are called spiritual goals. And they're vastly different. And these are the goals that they would never talk about on social media or they would talk about in the news. You won't find these goals, okay? And I want you to dig deeper into what you're doing and when you're preparing for these goals. I want you to think about these spiritual goals that you could have or you may have. Right? For example, I'll give you a good example. One of the students that we had, and I love this brother, mashallah. His name is Omar, for reference. He's at Princeton University. Came from Jordan. He's American, but also he's originally from Jordan. And he would tell me, he's a hafiz of Quran, by the way, right? So he didn't ended up missing his prayers and not reciting Quran. He took care of his deen, obviously. And this person, mashallah, I asked him, like, how do you memorize this Quran? You're busy, you have all these grades and all these expectations on your, and Princeton's workload is obviously as good as Rutgers, right? Well, Rutgers got probably better workload, right? But he told me, like, this is a goal that he had, and he told me about this. We were talking about spiritual goals, right? So those other goals are good to have as well, right? But now we're talking about spiritual goals. He said, every summer when I went back to Jordan for 2 months, I would memorize Quran. And he says, pretty much 5, 6 juz, 7 juz, I would do that and come back and I would just focus on my studies, right, academics. And he says, because other people, they went back and they played soccer, and they played video games, and they played with their, hung out with their boys, or they were chit-chatting and all these other things. And he says, that's what I did. And in 5 years, guess what? I memorized Quran. I read prayer. And alhamdulillah, and I ended up at Princeton University because his memorization skills were phenomenal. He could memorize because that's what he practiced. Just like your muscles, right? Brain muscles or other muscles. The more you use them, the better you get at it. So he said that's how I got it, and people don't recognize that. But he had a spiritual goal. So brothers and sisters, what I'm talking to you about, and if you can memorize Quran, mashallah, that's great. But my point is this: what is your spiritual goals, or what are your spiritual goals as you are going through this time and place, inshallah? So أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات. As I sit down, I want you to think about these goals, and I also want you to make dua and istighfar, inshallah. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. So I want to talk about a story of a person who actually wanted to have a really beautiful landscape garden, right? And you see that, you see beautiful grass and manicured, taken care of all. And so this man, he had a lot of wealth, and he reached out to one of the best horticulturists. What should I put in my garden, my lawn, that I don't have to worry about things. So he says, I want the weeds out, I want the plants in, I don't want to water them, so they should be self-sufficient in that term. I want to make sure that they don't grow too big, so I have to prune the trees and all these other things, just make sure it's all good. I don't want to make, I don't want to do anything to just make it really well and all self-sufficient kind of thing. And so the guy, the horticulture, he was like, I know exactly where you get that garden. And he was like, amazing, do it, right? And he's like, but you have to really work hard for that garden, actually. And the guy was like, are you kidding me? I thought I wanted something that's automatic, right? Autopilot kind of thing. And he said, yeah, that's a place you get in the hereafter when you work really, really hard in this life. So you get an amazing Jannah garden where everything's there for you and you don't have to lift your finger. However, in this place, and for us, right, the goal of it, the idea behind it, we would have to work hard, okay? Even when you get the amazing, life partner, there will be issues. Even if you get the best job, there will be issues. Even if you have the best health, there will still be issues. And if people are telling anybody, oh, if you take care of these things, then your life will be, that's just, it's not true. Because life, this world is designed to challenge us, right? Toynbee, the famous historian, he says, history could be summarized in a few terms, right? He says, it's a challenge and how civilizations, they responded to that challenge, right? The challenge is given, and so individuals, same thing. Your life is all about these challenges. What can you do about, let's say, your grades when you're not doing well? How do you respond to it? How do you respond when somebody really makes you angry? Right? How do you respond when things go bad? How do you respond when you don't have your friends and family to look after you and you're independent? How do you, as a good, conscious, moral Muslim, how do you respond to these situations? How do you respond to situations where things are out of control? And you're there, and either you join the party or you say, you know what, this is not for me. How do you respond? And that's what life is all about. So I want to, after we talk about clutter removal, I want to talk about focus, inshallah, as the few minutes that we have. So how should we get to, inshallah, and this is just, a few ideas that I'm sharing with you. What you have, mashallah, right, is a lot of time. And believe me, when we talk about, what do you mean by time? We spend so much time on studies and all that stuff. What you have is a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, right? When people get old, it all starts running out. What you have, for the most part, you have good health. Those things start fading away. So if we focus and then shoot for the stars, we'll land in the right place, inshallah. So the first thing I want you to think about as you are here, some of you are freshmen, inshallah, engage with Muslim chaplaincy. Right? This is your masjid. The imams here. This is the place. These are the people. Suhbah. When I returned, I was in Syria, and we were on the way back. I remember this person sitting next to me. I was reading some books in Arabic, and he was like, "Oh, why are you reading?" And I'm like, "Wow, you know Arabic?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm a professor at Princeton. I'm going through this stuff." And so he invites we invited him to Nurul Iman School where I was teaching, or as a teacher. And it ended up, he spoke about suhbah. That was the only thing he talked about, the Arabic word. The companionship, right? The friends that you build and you make, right? That is the utmost thing. And this is why chaplaincy is so important. The friends that you make here, the company that you keep here. It will keep you, inshallah, on the right path, right? There won't be slips. There will be slips, obviously, that's human nature. But you'll find yourself giving yourself the best shot, inshallah. Because that's your masjid. That's the place you want to be with. So that's number one. And these are the people who would remind you if you're doing something wrong. That's really not the place, that's not the way of Muslims. So engaging with Muslim chaplaincy. And it depends, you could, some people will be there to play games, and that's fine. And some people will be there to kind of engage and recognize. Remember, your time is limited, right? The opportunities that you have now, most of my studies in terms of reading books, right, in Islamic books I'm talking about, I did in my college career. If you look at my life, like how many days, and I've always read books, right? But I could tell you, that's what I did. So much so, I graduated with a degree in geology, but I did less geology books, most Islamic books. But that was me, but I do know I had time, and so I was able to do that. But once you're out of here, you may not have that luxury. So you want to build these resources. You want to build on that character, inshallah, when you have the zeal, when you have that commitment, when you have the energy, inshallah. So first thing, obviously, engage with chaplaincy. I can't stress more, right? I'm not getting any discounts. I don't know what chaplaincy offers. They don't give out French fries or come Friday or honorarium for Jumu'ah khutbah. We love them, but So remember that. Number two, study Islam. As a Muslim, you're only going to become better and better Muslim the more time you put into it. All right? So practicing, right? There's a way to it, and I'll talk about the next one. But you have, as an individual, you should know the basics of your deen. Hence, go back to the imam, the chaplain, the circle of studies, and all these things. But on your own, you should also be studying something. And really, if your field is medicine, you should be looking into Islamic medicine, medicinal ethics, right? If your field is environmental studies, you should be looking into environmental ethics in Islam. If your field is engineering, you should also be looking at the ethical component of engineering. Because we had, last few decades, engineers who graduated without any clue to environmental ethics or the environmental sciences. All they talk about is paving the road and creating concrete jungle, out of the cities. And then what happened was it destroyed all the habitats for other species, right? Threatened endangered species or animals or birds. I destroyed it because every time they had to build, they created this concrete thing, right? Buildings and roads and pavements, and then so we have to, what I'm trying to say is we have to study Islam and engage with our society, right? Make things better. But we have to first know what it takes to be a Muslim, right? How we're going to contribute to the society. It's all, inshallah, as we study our deen, whether we're studying the seerah, whether we're studying the Quran, reading, memorization, whether we're studying the dua, right, the dua that the prophets and the messengers used to make, all the du'as that are in the Quran, all of them together, right? So, again, this is all part of the big picture. And what is that big picture? Ittaqullah, right? وَلْتَنْظُرْ نَفْسٌ مَا قَدَّمَتْ لِغَدٍ. Be God conscious and look into what you have saved for tomorrow, right? That day that is coming. And the last thing, inshallah, I want to mention is dhikr, right? Dhikr, let it be, and dhikr, when I mention that, that means the salah, right? The 5 daily prayers, the recitation of the Quran, the word that you do on a consistent basis, the memorization, the reading of the Quran, the tasbih, the subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, after each prayers, the Ramadan time, all of that. And knowing the adhkar of the sabah wal masa. This is a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, right? All of us should be engaged in those, right? What do I mean by that? The Prophet ﷺ, when in the morning, right, aside from his prayers, he would engage in the dhikr, right? Allahumma anta rabbi la ilaha illa anta khalaqtani wa ana abdu wa ana ala ahdika wa wa'dika mastata'tu, right? The Sayyidul Istighfar. Allahumma bika asbahna wa bika amsayna wa bika nahya wa bika namut, right? I say these, I guess, to embarrass you or to show off like how much I know. I say these just so you recognize that there is our tradition, those of us who don't know, to engage, to look into the dhikr of the morning and the evening for the prophetic dhikr, right? Remembrance of Allah. Why? Because that's going to nourish your soul. Right? All of us are not just these materialistic beings. If you look at it, the world where it's gone, the postmodern society and culture, it's all about consuming things. It's all about consuming things. And the last few minutes I want to mention, inshallah, I think it's important. I guess you'll pay more attention to this too. The end of times, right, before the end, Isa alayhi salam, right, we talked about in our tradition, he's like the most spiritual person that you really see in the Islamic tradition, right? Because he is somebody who does all these healings and bringing dead back, and, people who are dead back to life, the blinds, it's all in our tradition, it's all in the Quran and the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And if you look at it, before he comes, as we understand it, as we believe in, before he comes back, right, it's the second coming, there will be another imposter who will be there. And he's going to be all about materialism, the success of this life, imposter. And he's called Dajjal, the one who fakes an ID, Masih al-Dajjal, right? He's going to fake to be like the Isa alayhi salam, but he's going to promise you not the spiritual world, but the material world. And when we look at it, our everything, and it's good to have materialistic goals. There's nothing, as long as we attach Allah to it. When we lose Allah, that's Shaitan's goal. Exactly, because all he said was, I will make sure, when I misguide them, the Bani Adam, I will, they will not be thankful to you. They will not remember you. They will not thank you. And that's what the difference between shukr gratitude, and the opposite is kufr, ingratitude, disbelief. And that's why it's important to recognize that. وَقُولُوا قَوْلِي هَذَا وَاسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ لِي وَلَكُمْ وَلِسَائِرِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَالْمُسْلِمَاتِ. Let us pray, inshallah, and make dua that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to the straight path, make us amongst those people who are people of taqwa, people of Allah, make us amongst those who have spiritual goals to help ourselves win the akhirah, inshallah. As we say and we recognize that give us the best of this life, and also we don't forget the best of the hereafter, and we work for that best, inshallah, and to save us and protect us from hellfire, and give us the Jannatul Firdaus that we're looking for, inshallah. Oh Allah, we indeed weak, and your promise is true, and you are the one who forgives, so we seek forgiveness from you. Oh Allah, we come to you on this day with all the problems and issues that we have, and what we offer is this dua. What we ask for is your help. What we seek is you, O Allah. What we recognize is that you are the priority, O Allah, and this is who and what we're seeking, inshallah, in this life. And when we say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, we recognize that you are the one who is our priority and our goal. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا وَإِن لَّمْ تَغْفِرْ لَنَا وَتَرْحَمْنَا لَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ رَبَّنَا عَلَيْكَ تَوَكَّلْنَا وَإِلَيْكَ أَنَبْنَا وَإِلَيْكَ الْمَصِيرُ لَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ الْعَلِيِّ الْعَظِيمِ وصلى اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وأقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله